We begin with explosive legal news from Washington. A federal grand jury has indicted New York Attorney General Letitia James on serious charges of bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. James, a prominent Democrat, has been at the forefront of legal action against President Donald Trump and his business empire in New York. This indictment, delivered by the U.S. Justice Department, marks a stunning escalation in the political and legal war between the Attorney General and the current administration. The two-count indictment was returned yesterday in the Eastern District of Virginia, where James is charged with one count of bank fraud and one count of making false statements to a federally insured institution. The focus is a home James purchased in Norfolk, Virginia. In 2020, prosecutors allege James deliberately misled the lender about the intended occupancy of the property in order to secure more favorable lending terms available only to primary or secondary residents. According to the federal filing, James signed a standard document known as a second home rider, a key component of the mortgage application that required her to use the property primarily for her personal use and enjoyment for at least 1 year. However, the indictment claims James immediately violated this agreement by renting the property out to a family of 3, treating it instead as an investment property. This alleged deception allowed James to qualify for a lower interest rate on the $1,397,000 mortgage, saving her an estimated $19,000 in costs and fees over the life of the loan, a financial benefit the Justice Department now claims was fraudulently obtained through criminal acts. Each count of bank fraud and false statements carries a potential maximum penalty of up to 30 years in federal prison and massive fines if James were convicted. The charges were formally announced by Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, who personally presented the case to the grand jury. Halligan issued a powerful and pointed statement saying no one is above the law and that the charges represent intentional criminal acts and tremendous breaches of the public's trust, a declaration widely interpreted as a response to the political firestorm surrounding the indictment. Attorney General James immediately and fiercely mounted her defense, calling the move a political weaponization of the justice system. In a lengthy statement, James decried the indictment as nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. She maintained that the charges are entirely baseless and that her office will fight these baseless charges aggressively while continuing her work on behalf of New Yorkers. James also took her defense to social media, posting on X that the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost for her successful civil fraud case against the Trump Organization, New York. Democrats and legal observers quickly rallied to her side, condemning the federal action as transparent political revenge. The context is crucial. The indictment closely follows a separate federal indictment secured in the very same Virginia district just 2 weeks prior, which charged former FBI Director James Comey, another outspoken Trump critic, with lying to Congress. Both cases were personally overseen and presented to the grand jury by U.S. Attorney Halligan. This pattern has drawn sharp criticism and concern from both political and legal observers, many of whom now argue that these actions represent a systematic effort by the Trump administration to target the president's perceived political enemies and erode the norms of an independent Justice Department. The atmosphere is fueled by President Trump's own social media statements, where he publicly urged the Attorney General to pursue charges against his political rivals, including James and Comey, often without citing any evidence of wrongdoing. The investigation that led to the indictment originated from a criminal referral sent to the Justice Department earlier this year by William Polt, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, a staunch political ally of President Trump. Polt's referral specifically alleged that James had falsified records to obtain favorable loan terms on multiple properties, raising the initial alarm that sparked the federal probe. It is worth noting that Polt's office has also referred other Democratic figures for similar mortgage fraud allegations, including Senator Adam Schiff and Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, figures who have also been frequent targets of the president's criticism. This multi-pronged referral effort has intensified the belief among Democrats that the Justice Department is being used to settle political scores. Furthermore, the charges came only after significant internal turmoil within the U.S. Attorney's Office. Sources familiar with the Justice Department's internal deliberations confirmed that career prosecutors in the Virginia office had previously expressed concerns over the strength of the evidence against James, with some reportedly declining to proceed with the case, citing a lack of proof of criminal intent. That internal standoff led to the resignation of the previous U.S. Attorney, Eric Siebert, allowing Lindsay Halligan, a prosecutor with ties to President Trump, to be installed in the role. Halligan then moved rapidly to secure the indictments against both James and Comey, a sequence of events that opponents argue underscores the political nature of these prosecutions. The political reaction was swift and unified among New York Democrats. Governor Kathy Hochul posted on X. What we're seeing today is nothing less than the weaponization of the Justice Department to punish those who hold the powerful accountable. While New York City Comptroller Brad Lander was even more blunt in a press conference outside City Hall, publicly declaring everyone knows that this case is bullshit, expressing the fierce opposition felt by many in the state to the federal action. The gravity of the political and legal conflict stems from the Attorney General's successful civil fraud lawsuit against President Trump. That monumental case resulted in a court finding of liability against Trump and an initial judgment that ordered him to pay over $450 million, a ruling that has defined the financial and legal landscape for the former president and established James as a primary target for political retribution. James's defense lawyer, Abby Lowell, a prominent figure in Washington legal circles, strongly reiterated his concerns that the case is driven purely by the president's desire for revenge and not by the facts or the law. Lowell emphasized that any misstatements found on the loan documents were merely clerical errors, not intentional criminal acts aimed at defrauding the lender, a distinction that will be central to the defense strategy in court. The core legal battle will center on the difficult task of proving criminal intent. Prosecutors must demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that James knowingly and willfully intended to defraud the financial institution to save money, while the defense will argue that any inaccuracies were simple mistakes quickly rectified or misunderstood by the bank. This burden of proof is high and will be the defining factor in the courtroom. Attorney General James is scheduled to make her initial appearance in federal court in Norfolk, Virginia on October 24th, where the case will proceed under a U.S. district judge appointed by former President Joe Biden. The trial, should it occur, is set to become a political spectacle underscoring the deep polarization within the country's legal and political institutions. This case sets a dangerous and deeply concerning precedent regarding the perceived independence of the Justice Department and the use of federal power against political opposition, the long-term ramifications for the public's trust in the fairness of the U.S. legal system are profound, as a state attorney general who successfully challenged a sitting president now faces a highly charged federal prosecution. Many lawmakers and legal observers are calling this a definitive moment for the checks and balances of U.S. democracy. We will continue to follow all developments from the Eastern District of Virginia as this consequential story unfolds.